Welcome back, everyone. The 2024 World Chess Championship between Gukesh and Ding continues. We are in Game 6, and I am personally excited for this recap because we actually had a London system played, which, as many of you may know, not only one of my favorite openings, but certainly an opening that I'd like to think I know a thing or two about. So, without further ado, let's get into today's recap. Now, London system, obviously an opening with the white pieces, which means we have Ding Liren to thank for this. And the last time that we saw the London system was also Ding Liren bringing it out against Jan Nepomniachtchi in his last match. Ironically, it was also in the exact same round. So who knows if that's a strategy by Ding, but we have the London system. Let me see if I can share some of the insight that I have in this opening, because I was very, very excited to see it on the board. Now, Ding has played the London system in what I would say is the proper way. He's played bishop f4 on move 2. The last time he played it, he included knight f3 first, and a lot of times at the highest level of chess, you will see the London sort of delayed, because the London itself is an opening that you need to play under the best circumstances possible. You can't just play, d4, bishop f4, because black could set up a very favorable pawn structure against it. But here, he plays bishop f4, and he's inviting d6, a lot of these King's Indian structures. He might know what his opponent is most likely going to choose as a setup, but obviously playing in London, even though it is a system opening, it is a very calculated approach, because I don't think you can just bring the London out without being very comfortable against the various setups that your opponent may choose. Nevertheless, we get a very standard one, d5, e3. This is exactly how I would recommend to play the London. Knight f3. I actually like the move knight d2 here, but it's a very small margin between the two, knight f3 and knight d2. So this move is perfectly good, at least according to how I would play the London. And then the move c3. The reason that white's not in a particular rush for knight bd2 is because if queen b6, queen b3 is always there for white, and in this particular line, there's no bishop f5 that's ever going to bother the queen. Sometimes you'll see situations like this where you either have to take the queen, or if you go back, the problem is you get hit with bishop f5. That's not the case here. So I think the move c3 is perfectly fine. Bishop d6, and if I were playing here, I probably would play my recommended move, which is knight bd2, and to actually take this pawn structure, be interested in capturing on c5 maybe, and bringing the knight into d4, strengthening the pawn with g3, bishop d3, castle, something like that. This is how I recommend to play. However, Ding's bringing this opening into the World Championship, and the last time that he did this, although the position was not the exact same, I think there was a capture and this bishop was even out on f5, Ding did go for a bishop b5 check or bishop b5 pinning the knight idea. And in this case, bishop takes f4 was not played because knight bd2 was not Ding's selection. Instead, he went back to a move that was very similar to the idea that he used last time, bishop b5. So not the same position, but very much utilizing the same idea. Bishop b5 check, or just bishop b5 in general, is definitely not the main square that this bishop gets deployed. It often goes to bishop d3. However, bishop b5 as a move, especially pinning a knight on c6 here, that's something that Magnus Carlsen used quite a lot when he first started playing the London, especially at the highest level. So this move is definitely a very well-known idea, but I would say less common than placing the bishop on d3. But you have to innovate, and obviously he's prepared this quite deep in order to play it in the World Championship of all places. So bishop b5, knight c6, and immediately just snapped off by Ding, which shows clear preparation and clear intent, because this is not something you normally do. You don't normally just take that. So Ding is clearly going for a line which is very forced, and that he's seen not only just the opening phase of, but into the middle game, and said, you know what, I'm comfortable. let's try to get that position and see what we can do here. So bishop a6 is a move that black's definitely intending here. The moment that he gets a free second, bishop a6 is going to stop castling. It's very strong, and this is why obviously you're playing with fire by just giving up your light square bishop like this. So bishop takes d6. It makes sense that what we're about to see is very prepared line, Ding playing moves that are very forcing. Takes, queen a4. Not only does this stop bishop a6, but it intends a very common maneuver, queen to a3. So queen a4 hits the pawn. You might think the plan is knight e5, but really the plan is to drop back here. And the dream for white would be some sort of exchange like on d4, and then maybe the queens disappear as well, and then the resulting position would be a pawn structure like this with an open c file. That's what white is going for. Castles, queen a3, still watching the bishop a6 move, by the way. And at this point, you can see the power of this pin. If black plays knight d7 to guard the pawn, well, white can castle, can bring the knight to b3. The pin remains there, which is actually very uncomfortable. And you can't push or capture. So, how do you manage this position? Knight e4 played. And by the way, while I'm, definitely going to sing the praises of Ding for playing the London system, I have to step back and mention that Gukesh is absolutely up to the task here. Engine eval straight around 0.00 the entire time. I would say Gukesh has been playing the top moves. He's also reacted to Ding's London system quite well. He's not down on the clock. So far, he's played what I would say are pretty much all the best moves, all the best reactions. So while I'm excited to see this from Ding, and I don't think we've reached the end of his variation, Gukesh has definitely defended and played this line about as well as you could so far. So knight e4 played, and at this point, there's definitely a choice to be made, because knight b to d2, to me, and probably to everyone watching, this is the obvious move. Now, the issue with knight d2 is that black can take on d4, and we can't really take back in any way without allowing this very uncomfortable set of double isolated pawns on the a file. So we need to trade queens here, and hang on a sec, isn't this the exact structure that we were talking about? I was saying, well, this is what white is dreaming of. The one issue here is that black is just a little bit too quick. So rook b8, just a move to hit the pawn and force b3, and then bishop a6. And this is actually playable, in my opinion. Maybe this is an idea, a separate position to try to play, but for the most part, I would say black is kind of satisfied here. White has a hard time playing knight c5. Like, it just takes a while to get the knight there. In the meantime, black is probably going to open things up with f6, e5, something like that. And not being able to castle here is actually quite annoying. Maybe even rook c8 and c5 will get played. So I think black's doing fine here. Maybe this is a try. If Ding had to play the London again, this would be another variation that'd be worth a try. Obviously not in this match, but just in general, I'm sure this isn't the worst idea, but it's also a very predictable one. So instead, Ding goes for the unpredictable knight d2, and this is the type of thing that preparation is all about. Everyone expects knight b to d2. Instead, he goes knight f to d2, taking into account that the exact same variation that you may want to go for this time is not possible. Now I can take on e4, and the one difference is that when the queen takes on a3, I've got my knight here. This is a huge difference. And this position would be fantastic. Now I have an open file, I have knight against bishop, the pawns are ruined, and I don't really care about this anymore because I can bring my king into the middle. So I thought this was an interesting move, knight back to d2 from the f file, and still Gukesh, without really blinking, plays the move e5, and we go into a forced variation, takes on e4, queen takes c5. Of course, black is not interested in any of this stuff. currently down a pawn, maybe about to be down two, but you see things switch as the initiative is grabbed by Gukesh with this fantastic move, queen g6. This is how you have to play with black, and he definitely knows this. Both of these guys, I would say, are in their preparation here. Hitting the g2 pawn, castling is just not an option with the scary bishop h3 coming. How else do you defend it? Rook g1 is also kind of silly. First of all, bishop h3 could be played anyway, but also, you know, there's many queen moves to the h file to hit that pawn. At that point, you're kind of playing with fire. So rook g1 is playable, but I would say, you know, black's got a ton of counterplay with the bishop coming to d3, pressure on the h and the g pawn, and just open lines everywhere. I don't know that you really want to do that. He decides, okay, let's play knight d2, still part of the prep. Queen takes g2 and castles. Now with the king castled on the queen side, in my opinion, we just got such an interesting position. We have an imbalanced bishop for knight. We also have the kings castled on opposite sides, and the pawn structure is nothing alike. So in terms of imbalances, I just thought this was a rather unique position. But you can see based on the times that are on the clocks for the two players here, minute 50, or not a minute, an hour 56 and an hour 51. Both of these guys are relatively comfortable with the position, and black grabs two pawns here. White snags the pawn on e5, defending the e3 pawn. And this is most likely the result of the preparation. I don't know that 100%, but just watching the game, that's what it seems like, that you would probably prepare until about this point. Black plays rook b8, white plays knight c4, and I wouldn't be surprised if Ding had this position prepared. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Gukesh had been preparing lines against the potential London to be played, which is very smart because Ding went for it in his last match. He does go for it here. It's one of those things that everyone loves to hate on, but you got to be ready for it. So it seems like Gukesh also did some great work against the London because he seems to be ready for this line right here. So knight c4, bishop e6, rook d2, hitting the queen here, and after queen f3, rook e1, again, we've reached a pretty standard position. All the pawns that white has remaining are defended. The queen looks pretty comfortable, ready to take on c6 at a moment's notice, and also the move b3 may happen. The knight can jump into d6. I think black has to be slightly more careful than white here because, you know, you'd be kind of crazy to start motoring these pawns up the board on the king side where you're still vulnerable. Queens are on the board, and meanwhile, I don't really see how black can get the attack going in a similar way because, yeah, as I mentioned, potentially knight d6 is happening. So black takes, plays queen f5, and I don't really know. I mean, the engine will always have suggestions here. I can't really tell whose side is easier to play because for white, I like that everything's defended, and then you've just got your queen that's able to go around taking things. And am I that scared of these open files? Not really, right? Everything's well defended. I've got my rook defending laterally, and I just don't really see these three pieces coordinating for an attack. So I'm looking at all these pawns as weaknesses, and also the move e6 coming up. So, you know, if black defends this pawn, I've got rook f1, I've got e6, and white just looks like he's in control. So queen f5 played against e6. It means that the pawns can be traded. And now Ding offers the queen exchange, which I fully understand. You've got two connected pass pawns over here. And while black also has them over here, they're just more difficult to get going. And white has some pawns in the way that are going to slow things down. So I would say in most endgames here, I would tend to prefer the white pass pawns because they're more mobile, and for example, the c pawn is already a pass pawn. So while the queens can be exchanged, clearly we see a strong resistance and aversion to that with queen e7, queen d6 driving the point home, queen g5, and I actually thought that we would repeat here. I found it interesting that Ding was willing to play queen d5 here because now if queen e7, this is 3 times. Right? So we've got this position there. This is the first time that it's happened. Then we had this. That's the second time it's happened. Then we had this. So this would be the third time, queen e7. So it was all on Gukesh to decide whether to play on. I actually thought that Ding had the better position here. So once again, we just see that constant theme in this World Championship match where I like Ding's position. I think he's played decently. He seems to have a small edge. Nothing meaningful where I'm saying, oh, it's a huge edge. He's insane, the engine. No, just I like his position. And I think he should be playing some of these positions on. So I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe an aversion to just playing long games. Maybe with the length of the match, he's not interested in that. Or maybe he's just kind of risk averse in general in the match. He wants to get a clean advantage if he can grab it, and all of these ones where he's slightly better but could still go either way. He's not interested in over pushing. Who knows? It's a valid strategy. I think personally, all the positions that Ding has chosen not to play on, he's leaving a lot on the table. But interestingly enough, it's Ding who's not doing more with this position, and it's Gukesh who is. He plays Queen H4 to play on. So I was like, what the heck is happening here? This is roles reversed. I love Ding's London. I mean, trust me, to play the London for any type of advantage at the highest level of chess is super, super difficult because, the London, according to the engine, forfeits most of that advantage on move 2, on move 3. And he still managed to do it. G6 played by Black. The game continued thanks to Gukesh playing Queen to H4. Although I still feel that Ding's mode here was very much like trade the pieces off, which is understandable, but not just trade them off, but always be looking to neutralize the game instead of pushing forward. So Queen F4, Queen A5, A3, Queen B5, Rook D4, and again, I thought that Ding was doing something here, but in order for Ding to continue, we would need to see very risky moves. So it is tough to make progress a little bit. I wasn't exactly sure how to continue. Queen G3 was an interesting move that just when I was watching made some sense to me. Basically, you're not really interested in capturing the queen because it exposes your E pawn, and then maybe this pawn can catch up as well. But at the same time, you want to get your pawns going, and you can't feel comfortable pushing those pass pawns with the queen still on the board. So King C2 played, the queens get exchanged like this, and now with Black connecting the pawns, it does make sense that, at the very least, Black should be okay here. E3 I thought was an interesting move, but he realized that simply, the king could kind of waltz in here if not taken care of, which is why H5 was played. And at this point, honestly, the guys were just liquidating, and with the check, there's not really progress that can be made here. And we do finally see a repetition after many, many moves. This is now move 46. And the game ends in a draw. So after all of that, Ding plays the London, clearly well prepared. Gukesh, honestly up to task, seemed to know everything about the line that was played. I like that Ding is going back to this bishop b5 in the opening, innovative. He's trying to make a lesser known variation work, which is usually what you have to do in order to play an opening like the London, especially when you've already played it in World Championship before. The surprise factor is gone. How do you continue to innovate and be surprising in that opening? I think he managed that here. I was really impressed by Gukesh this game. I thought that he played a great opening. He knew when to sacrifice the pawn, but it still got into a middle game where I felt that Gukesh, maybe he was around even, but I did feel like Ding had a small edge. However, he just wasn't willing to take any chances with the position, which I understand to an extent, but at what point do you have to take a chance? So it wasn't going to be this game. It really tells me that in this match going forward, I'm getting the sense that Ding Liren wants to win the match by a small margin. Clearly, because he's very risk averse. He's not willing to push, in my opinion. I'm not seeing him trying to push those positions where he may have the preferable side of a draw. And because of that, it means that I think he wants more of an advantage to feel comfortable pressing at all. And if he has more of an advantage, at that point, it's probably trending more towards a win. So I feel that these slight edges, the ones that I might see Magnus trying to play on or really push and try to maximize, those don't feel like they're enough for Ding. He wants more than that, and if he gets it, he'll take it and most likely prosecute it successfully. But if he doesn't, I feel that he's more likely to say, okay, let's not be risky. Let's make the draw. And that's what we've continued to see. So I expect that we'll see that going forward. Gukesh, on the other hand, does take a little bit more risk, which also comes with more risk as well. And maybe Ding is confident that that's his game plan. Gukesh, on the other hand, you know, he has to be reasonably happy. He's shown some good stuff in the opening, especially the last couple games where we've had the draws. I think Gukesh has shown something good initially, but then he's found himself on the back foot. Now, the bright spot for Gukesh is while he's found himself on the back foot, in my opinion, in some of these games, like I said, Ding has not really pushed forward. So when you have someone that you're playing against, almost psychologically, you're trying to read into things, this is someone who's not pressing or even over pressing at all in positions where they are slightly better. And that's got to be a good feeling. So it also means that if Gukesh gets one game, it could really swing the match as well. So the more I see the chess and the type of chess that these guys are playing against one another, the more I think that one single game could decide this match. We saw the jitters and the early back and forth strikes, but it does feel like this game is now, this match rather, is going to come down potentially to a single game. So kind of resides more on the, I think it's more on the preparation and who can bring out that one big game that they need. I could definitely seeing it be either player because Gukesh is in the nice position where it feels like Ding is kind of using up his good fortune, if you will. All these good positions, Ding is just making draws in them and not pressuring Gukesh. And I think overall that could end up working in Gukesh's favor. So those are my thoughts. I was very excited to see the London. Also very excited to look more into this bishop b5 line myself, as you may imagine. Sorry to everyone out there, but you are going to see London in your games on chess.com way more as a result of Mr. Ding and his London today. So guys, I will see you for the next round. Remember, we do have a rest day, and I will see you for the next recap after that.